In the first part of the two-part episode, we heard Amit's journey in the field of sustainability, his role as Coca-Cola CSO, and his best moment during his 3-decade experience. We also learned about the life cycle assessment of one bottle of Coke, the footprint which goes into making this one bottle which we take for granted. Amit also shared the measures Coca-Cola is actively undertaking, like replenishing more than 1.5 liters of water for every liter consumed and the World Without Waste initiative. If you haven't checked out the first part yet, I would suggest you to come back here after hearing part 1. Now, let's dive into part 2. When companies go about implementing these sustainable practices, what kind of support are they getting from the regulatory bodies? Or is it not support at all? Is it just a lot of problems? And especially if you could talk about the Indian context, that would be great.
I'll talk about plastics because very close to my heart. I've been doing this for last 2 years after leaving Coke and wanting to do work on my own in this space, and therefore I have interacted with multiple companies and associations like CII, FICCI, and also government bodies which are either helping or supporting this entire implementation of plastic waste management rules. And those could be Ministry of Environment and Forest, Central Pollution Control Board, Niti Aayog, Jal Shakti, and many others, Ministry of Urban Housing, for example, and Swachh Bharat Mission SBM. My response to this question is that there are problems at the ground level. We are trying to solve it at 36,000 feet. Many of these organizations, including the government. I will explain just with one example, the example of implementation of plastic waste rules. So the plastic waste rules require that a company like Unilever has to go and collect its post-consumed plastics from the consumers and then manage it in the recycling chain, whether there are some which can be recycled should go into the recycling to the recyclers or recycling network, and while the others which are not really recyclable can at least generate energy in a waste to energy plant or replace coal in a cement plant and things of that nature. So this is a very lofty yet useful aim of plastic waste management rule. What is the current situation on the ground? You and I live in cities, and we don't ourselves segregate plastics from the rest of the waste. We don't even segregate dry waste and wet waste. And even if some of our citizens actually take that thing up, and I've seen it in some cities, the waste will get mixed up in the municipality's truck which is carrying it anyway, because they don't have a segregated system. So they will mix up our own dry and wet waste together. And suppose if they still do it, if they segregate it, then there is no further separate treatment system for separating this dry and wet waste and then treating it by each fraction. Very few cities, and I think I can count it on one hand, that have actually put an integrated waste management system which is going all the way to door, asking segregated waste from the citizens and then treating it as a separate fraction all the way. Indore is one example, and probably that is the only example which comes to my mind. Now, if you do not have anything on the ground which separates dry and wet waste, and municipalities are looking at pollution control board at the ground level is looking at the urban local body or the corporation, the implementers have to be those set of people. The situation is not improving. So a company like Unilever or a company like P&G or a company like Coca-Cola then is asking the question back to government, saying that where is my fraction of plastic waste which I have to pull back? If your system is broken at the ground level, how do I pull back my plastics? Do you want me to start working as a municipality and training each of the citizen, 125 billion of them, to separate the waste and then start pulling it back? That is not our core role, and that is not what we are meant for. We are meant for producing products and entertaining customers and consumers and feeding their need. This is not like Europe, where each citizen today is separating waste into different colors of the bins, and the municipality comes and takes them separately on separate days. So the long story short is that there is a huge issue on the ground level, and yet we're trying to solve this problem at 36,000 feet with different ministries jumping into it. Jal Shakti trying to create a wave of citizen doing Shramdan, collecting plastics on 2nd October. Minister of Environment and Forest coming up with EPR guidelines, extended producer responsibility guidelines and framework, and CPCB penalizing companies, saying that you have not done enough, or I don't see what you can do and what you have done. We are creating a kind of a showdown at the top level, people questioning each other, but at the ground level, there is hardly any change which is happening. What is really required is people come down to the ground level, work at the level of municipalities, at the level of cities, at the level of towns and villages, to really have a system set up and then build on that system. What we have seen in Singapore, for example, that EPR guideline is being announced to be implemented in next 2 years, and yet they are setting up the system at the level of Singapore, at the street level and the level of waste generation, and at the level of brand of how they will gear up to the EPR, meeting the extended producer responsibility. So that is coming first. So this is like that. This is the right order, but I think the order in India has been cart before the horse, where legal implementation and repercussion has been put forward first, and then we are trying to solve the problem of logistics at the ground level. This is something which I am very passionate about, so I am speaking up front with the viewers and with the listeners. The idea is, I think everyone, including us, have to go back at the level where we can solve the problem, while there could be at a higher level a guiding document saying that we are moving in a direction of circularity, we are moving in a direction of waste segregation, and therefore we are able to manage our plastic waste rules as any other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think what you pointed out is, so it tells you two things, right? The good thing is that the government is actually trying to do something. We're referring to the Indian context, right? So the government is actually trying to do something about it, but they're just lacking the efforts that need to be put in to build up the efforts from bottom up, especially in a country with 125 billion people, where tier 2, tier 3 cities lag behind tier 1. And even in tier 1, we're not doing very well, right? So I think what you pointed out is the exact direction we need to be pushing the government and the companies into, that start building the effort from bottom up. I think this is where I move on to this whole concept that we've been talking about, right? That your new startup. So I think what inspires me the most is that after 30 years of experience and the amazing work that you've done and leading the sustainability of Fortune 500 company, you chose to start something of your own. You took the plunge after 30 years. I'm pretty sure every entrepreneur who knows about you is in awe of your guts and your passion. So would I please request you to share your thought process behind the shift and what's the aim for PRO India Reset?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It is motivating to hear this. It's not an easy journey, and it's not an easy decision to work in corporates and get pampered, both from at salary levels and as well as with the teams and the structure and support system of consultants and employees, to actually propel you in the direction of the career and take you up all the way, and then suddenly the next day not having a single employee, but you are trying to do everything on your own in a territory where you have to define your own product and you have to make your own living. It has been a difficult decision. It has been not an easy journey from point of view of revenues and sales and stuff like that, but it has been very enriching. I've learned a whole lot in the last 2 years, and probably more than what I could have in the last 20 when I dived into this space. And I think the reason of doing so was I saw plastics coming in terms of the wave and issues around the same. So as an environmentalist, because I have managed environment function not only in Coca-Cola for 20 years, but before that in Gillette also, and even before that in Eicher. So I understand this space a little bit, and I was seeing that developing work around and against plastics, and plastics becoming a environmental nuisance, something which has to be managed. So I saw the environment aspect very closely when I was within Coke, but I also saw that in India, plastics have a circular economy, especially for PET bottles of Coca-Cola. We had seen that, we had collected that, we had got them converted into polystaple fiber using our mechanism of suppliers. And today I can say it with pride that way back in 2012, 2013, all t-shirts that were being produced and up till now were made out of recycled plastics. And in 2014, 2015, we also got our employees to wear uniforms made out of recycled plastics and cotton together. So like a polyester, which we developed and continues to be. So I saw plastics as a major challenge from environment point of view, but I also saw plastics as a currency from a waste pickers point of view, the bottom of the pyramid, which actually scavenges the waste that we throw out and takes out the good quality plastics from it, and plastics actually become 60% of the revenue of a daily wager in the cities, the urban poor. So I saw that as a currency. So when you're talking about a currency, this is another way to give back to the set of society, which is sitting in urban areas, yet they are extremely poor. They don't have an access to even the basic health services. Their livelihood is suffering, and they actually live close to 15 years less than you and me. So that is another area of work which could have been done via using plastics. And at the end, the third P. So we talked about people and planet. We also talk about profit, and I realized that there can be a circular economy which can be built in around plastics. And there is Alan MacArthur report suggesting $120 billion just in Europe. So it could be $500 billion for rest of the world, including Europe. Even in India, we use about more than 20 to 21 million tons of plastic, and if we start recirculating that in a circular economy, we are actually going to save a whole lot of money. So profit was a third and important objective, especially for corporates. And when I realized that all the three P's are coming together with this effort of mine called Pro India, where we are wanting to bring the plastics back, using the bottom of the pyramid, integrating their work with our work, and also benefiting them when we start getting revenues from the plastic circularity. We are also going to take away the plastics from the environment. So those were the reasons for me to start Pro India. It has been a great journey to interact, synergize a lot of efforts of companies together. So we are working with group of companies. We are trying to bring new products, not just bring plastics back. We are trying to bring new products into this consumer space, not just t-shirts and but also we can make oil out of waste soiled plastics which cannot be recycled. The process is called pyrolysis. We can convert plastics into sheets and use it for affordable homes, and those could be the plastics again which cannot be recycled. We can mix plastics with wood shavings to create plastic wood, which is another area which can replace a lot of wood, especially used in households for various parts like doors and stuff like that, which does not catch any rust. It does not catch any parasites, and foolproof. I mean, doesn't catch termites as well. So there are a lot of other products. But the other things which I'm equally and probably more interested in are those products which could be from a financial product like plastic exchange, which we are working with stock exchange, something similar to carbon trading. But I don't want to use the word carbon trading because people have not a lot of trust remaining in the carbon trading anymore. But plastic trading could mean that a plastic exchange could mean where there are generators of plastic pollution, and there are also municipalities which are actually pulling back the plastic. So can they trade the certificates in such a manner that somebody is conserving or returning that plastics, and somebody is generating the same. And then the other thing that we are working on with help of consultants and IDH is called plastic index, where each company is is can be it's self-declared, but can be rating itself in the sector where they stand, their effort of plastic circularity and plastic sustainability, and therefore can also learn from the other people in the sector and teach to some others in the lower quadrant, yet trying to create economies of scale and scope when it comes to pulling back the plastics. So these are some of the products that we are coming up with. It is at Pro India, we would like to be we'd like to create benchmarks and some of the leading indicators and some of the practices which are unique and yet very much adaptable to the country, while we are trying to learn this subject altogether, the plastic circularity subject altogether. Those were the very reasons for creating Pro India, wanting to do unique stuff and some thought leading stuff in the areas of plastics. And I'm pretty happy with where I am today, especially from satisfaction of creating something, or in the process of creating something which is very unique.
Wow, I mean, I couldn't agree more, right? As a fellow entrepreneur in the plastic space, I think the plethora of uses that you just talked about, actually the plethora of uses that we haven't talked about, that people don't really understand exist, which are applicable worldwide. They open up so many economic opportunities, so many jobs, etc., right? But we haven't yet moved into that. And I think this entire push around circular economy will help us do that, especially with the tech coming in, like the Circularitics tool by Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the other tools that are coming up, which help us measure our footprint, measure our circular economy, how much are we adopting the circular economy, etc. They would help propel this a lot. And I think this is the same thing that we are also doing at Infinity Box to do away with single-use plastics and bring the circular economy into the food delivery industry. So I think especially at this point, the whole world is abuzz with circular economy. But it's this satisfaction that we entrepreneurs work for. It's this satisfaction that we have caused an impact. We have learned something new, and I think we will be the driving the change. So I think given that it's the entrepreneurs who are pushing the governments, the market, everybody to move towards a more sustainable space, what would be your advice be to, let's say, a young entrepreneur in India who would want to learn how to incorporate more circular, sustainable practices into their business, how to go about setting it up, or what are the challenges that they should be aware of exist in an ecosystem like India, and what are the steps they could take?
So this is what I keep telling to the employees and the younger generation when they join the companies, or otherwise when they look for opportunities to become an entrepreneur and just out of the college and want to be an entrepreneur, or just few years out of a company and want to be an entrepreneur, is question, ask, don't remain in the status quo, and probably ask your fellow employees, or ask the stakeholders what can be done differently. And as you just mentioned that there are so many opportunities in this space, whether it's bringing back plastics in a unique way so that it doesn't get mixed up with the rest of the waste, and you are able to segregate and recycle, or to create alternatives of plastics in such a way that are economical and yet functional. I'm sure in food delivery functionality, you must be seeing a lot of importance to the flavor retention, the curries of India, spreading into the package itself. So a question. So idea is to question the status quo. What can be done differently? Those lead to opportunities that could be very unique to that entrepreneur. So like you have found a unique opportunity to continuously return the package of a Swiggy box, for example, and you should talk about it in this talk itself. That the same what if the same box keeps coming back to you after a proper wash and hygiene and everything, sanitation? So therefore you don't need one box every day. You probably need maybe one box for a month and things like that. So you reduce the consumption, yet you are able to continue using the functionality of plastics. If a person is sitting in a company, again the idea is to question the management, or question the fellow department or fellow colleagues as to what are we doing in this space to not just reduce the amount of plastics that we are using, but also to find where is our plastics going and can it be reused back in our own operations. We are trying to teach this concept of personal plastic footprint. We are trying to teach the concept of plastic neutrality at the corporation level, at the level of corporate, at the level of a township, or at the level of a factory or a BPO office as well. So let's say if you are sitting in a BPO office and the call, you don't have a call to attend and you're thinking as a budding entrepreneur what to do next. What you should look at is that a BPO probably generates very high quality dry waste and paper, plastics, and some other stuff. It is not mixed. Can that, where is that thing going? Can it come back as used paper, which you can use in your sheets, and you can also talk about in your sustainability report? Can the plastic bottles go back and become t-shirts and come back for your next event? Who can do that for you? Can there be a circularity built in almost everything in such a way that you are having a near neutral effect of these commodities that you use, especially for plastics, because I'm only talking about plastics at this point in time. And if you do so and you become plastic neutral, can you take this concept to your homes, and can you question not only at your household but also in your society? Can that whole concept of neutrality be practiced right there? If you have to practice neutrality, there will be always opportunities which will come out, and so there will be someone who will come up and say, okay, I'll do this part, which is I'll take this plastic away from you, convert it, recycle it, or value add it and bring it back to you. So I think the most important thing for a young entrepreneur to become a young entrepreneur, or even for a young entrepreneur, is to question the status quo and say what can be done differently to have a different outcome which has circularity built in it, sustainability built in it, and also an enterprise built in it. And we have seen the space from all the way from blockchain opportunities to the opportunities of recycling, hardcore recycling at a municipality level. So the whole spectrum is so wide for an entrepreneur, especially in India, because the opportunities in India are immense. Not just the consumption is immense, but we always face one problem or the other in from morning to the evening, and each of these problem is an opportunity for an entrepreneur. So that's what my call to the entrepreneur or would be entrepreneur will be, that go and ask, question the status quo, and then you will find an opportunity.
I could not resonate more with this. You see, I completely believe in this idea that I think it's a gift to be young, because we don't necessarily have to follow what's been going on, right? These preconceived notions that it's just the way it is. Like you said, right? Food always used to come in full plastic containers, so nobody thought about it like the second time. But as somebody who's young and who understands that the most impact that the climate change, the changing environment would have is on our generation, right? Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and we have to do something about it. And if we go ahead and ask these questions, like you rightly said, then there will be so many opportunities that are going to come up, and especially in the changing environment that we talked about, where the market, the consumers, and the regulatory authorities to an extent are moving towards a more sustainable space, where they're converging towards that. I think it's a great opportunity for us to be raising these questions and to think about opportunities that we can take up to ensure that we move towards sustainable and circular.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that brings us to an end of this, and I think it's been extremely insightful. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for this opportunity, and I wish our readers, our listeners will like this, and they can always reach back to you and to me if they need more assistance in becoming an entrepreneur or within their own organization. If they want to practice sustainability, we'll be too happy to support them.
Hey listeners, I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Stay tuned for weekly episodes on Bending the Lines as we give you a circular lens of industries. Do follow Infinity Box and support us in the journey of a circular world. Until next time, this is your host, Shashwat Gangwal, signing off.